Understanding the misguidance of prophets and Imams, a Quranic and narrative perspective. In the shadows of Quranic verses and noble hadiths, the questions arise above the concept of misguidance and guidance with respect to prophets and Imams, peace be upon them. The Holy Quran mentions regarding the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, and he found you lost and guided you, which necessitates contemplation on the mentioned misguidance and its relation to the status of infallibility that the prophets and Imams are adorned with. Misguidance and guidance in the balance of the Quran and Sunnah. It is necessary to understand misguidance in its Quranic and narrative context in a way that is compatible with the stations of prophets and Imams. The mentioned misguidance does not mean deviation from the truth, but refers to a state of not reaching the perfection of knowledge or action that is required for them, according to their spiritual and metaphysical status and their existential capacity. Every person has their own existential capacity, and anything less than that is considered misguidance for them. Thus, for an ordinary Muslim person, misguidance may be considered when he does not fully and completely perform his religious, scientific, and practical duties. For another person, misguidance may be considered when he does not fulfill his duties towards guiding the community and helping them to see the truth. And for the saints and close ones, it is considered misguidance when they do not reach the full perfection that they were supposed to reach according to their existential capacity, intellect, and the preparations that God Almighty has given them. Infallibility and the concept of misguidance. Infallibility means being preserved from error and slip in speech and action, and it is one of the characteristics of prophets and Imams that qualifies them as examples and models for humanity. In fact, because they are the example and model that humanity follows, they must be infallible from error in aspects related to the declaration, dissemination, and application of divine law, so they can truly be a model for everyone. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and the concept of misguidance in his regard. In the status of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, the mentioned misguidance is understood as a stage prior to receiving revelation and the complete guidance for his prophetic mission. This does not mean misguidance in creed or behavior, but is an expression of the search and readiness for receiving the heavenly message and reaching that great status that befits the master of creatures. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, in accordance with his existential capacity, the breadth of his chest, and his high status before God Almighty, until he reaches the status of, then he approached and descended, and was at a distance of 2 bow lengths or nearer. Any status less than this status is considered misguidance for the messenger of God, peace and blessings be upon him. Application to Imams and saints. Similarly, this concept can be applied to Imams and saints, where their misguidance or deficiency is measured by very high standards that correspond to their status and closeness to God Almighty, and this is what distinguishes them from other people. As for misguidance and lack of guidance for other people, it may be a shortfall in a religious duty that God Almighty has tasked the person with, or for some people, not implementing all the morals and psychological virtues may be misguidance and deviation from the Islamic path, because it does not fit the status of that saint or true believer. Thus, misguidance and guidance differ from one person to another based on their perceptions, understanding, readiness, and existential capacity. Whether they are an ordinary person among the believers and close ones to Allah, to God Almighty, or a saint from the saints of God, or a prophet from the prophets. And for prophets as well, each according to his status before God Almighty, reaching a status lower than the one they should be on is considered misguidance for them. Conclusion. Researching the concept of misguidance and guidance for prophets and Imams emphasizes their great status and highlights divine wisdom in choosing them for guiding humanity. They are the supreme examples in behavior and piety, and through them, we draw lessons of guidance and righteousness. We ask God Almighty to guide us by the guidance of His noble Prophet and His pure family, and to make us among those who follow their path in goodness and virtue.